Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. Before I get into everything, a couple disclaimers. This will be an advanced guide. I'm going to be assuming that you have a base knowledge of Volibear's kit and what the items he typically buys do. If you're confused on how Volibear works at a base level, I'd recommend checking out a tutorial video on how to play him and then coming back after you have some games under your belt. I started playing League just under 2 years ago, and Volibear soon after. With the champion, I've been able to climb from silver to diamond in under a year using some techniques I've picked up along the way. With this guide, I want to share some of these techniques, what sort of items and runes I'm taking, and how I'm able to capitalize on Volibear's strong early game power to transition into a hybrid tank damage dealer in the mid game. With that, let's get right into it. I'll start with skilling Voli and the runes we will take. There are two main rune pages I run on Volibear. Press the attack page and a grass page. Generally, we will be taking our PTA page as it makes Volibear an early game menace and you can get some amazing burst potential with it. We take Presence of Mind as it's key for keeping Volibear's mana problems in check for the early game, and it comes in clutch for teamfights when you need to regen mana on takedowns. We take Tenacity and Last Stand because when we're fighting, we're generally below 50% HP and we're getting rebites off of Maul, and both of these runes enable us to keep doing that damage. For secondaries, look to take Shield Bash for more burst, and Revitalize for increased W healing and E shielding. Now, a point of contention is I've seen a lot of Volibears take Demolish, and admittedly I used to too. Shield Bash helps us win in the close fights that Volibear likes to take, and that's why I like to take it. For secondaries, I always take Ability Haste, and then take Armor or MR as you need. I like taking the health bonus on the last page for increased W damage and healing. A backup page that I like to use leans further into the tank playstyle, with us taking Conditioning in addition to Shield Bash and Revitalize on the first page. This can be sub for a second win in tougher lanes, but the extra tankiness from Conditioning is super noticeable in the mid game. We also take Presence of Mind and Tenacity or Last Stand as secondaries for this page, and that's for the same reasons as before. When building Volibear, pretty much always take your E level 1. It enables you to trade up in melee lanes and get some safe CS in range lanes, and it's your best tool to shove in the early game. Taking Q level 2 is generally your best bet, as it can secure an E at close range, and it works as an auto reset for if you're going to miss a CS. When playing against most melee lanes after that, we're going to max W. It's another auto reset, but it also enables us to play on the wave with the pressure of a rebite, and that's automatically a winning trade. As we level it up to levels 4 and 5, our healing is going to start to chunk and completely zone melee opponents off the wave. Versus harder range matchups or melee matchups where I have a high kill threat, I'm often taking another point in Q at level 4, and that's just to close the gap, but in 90% of lanes I'm still maxing W by level 9. I will say, don't take what I'm saying here as gospel. I've maxed Q before W in lanes where the junglers haven't really been topside and I can threaten a kill on a range top, or into champs that simply can't damage me enough to justify maxing W. Regardless, in all of our games, we're going to leave E as a 1-point wonder and look to max Q or W moving forward. Now, for items. Buying a Doran's Ring in 2 pots to start the game is what I do in 95% of my games. Against despicable matchups like Vayne or Tristana, I might consider taking Doran's Shield, but back when I could get 2 Doran's items, I would still buy D-Ring first and then back for the shield. The reason for this is, even in poke matchups, your ticket to winning the lane is shoving, and the AP from D-Ring synergizes super well with your passive in E. After that, I'm looking to get move speed, so my boots of choice are Lucids. They enable a quick TP cooldown when you back for it, and it also has crazy synergy with your kit. Ability Haste is Volibear's single best stat, due to it reducing the cooldown for a 20% max HP heal, so we prioritize Lucids every game. Against heavy AD comps, Tabbies are alright, but generally I don't go Mercs unless it's a very good Merc situation. Our core item in all of our games is going to be Iceborne Gauntlet. It has everything we want: HP, Ability Haste, a way to stick on our targets, and a Sheen buildup, which is super good for our 2 auto reset abilities. Sometimes buying a casual Amp Tome is good against lanes where you're in a shoving rhythm with your opponent, but most of the time I find myself buying a Kindle Gem first, and then either Armor or a Sheen depending on whether I need to spec defensively or offensively. After finishing Iceborne, press tab and look at the enemy team. Is your bot lane feeding? Is the enemy mid a problem? See who on the enemy team is a problem, and then build MR or more armor accordingly. Our armor item of choice will be Frozen Heart, and our MR item of choice will be Spirit Visage. Frozen Heart gives mana and ability haste, which is great in addition to the 100 armor, while Spirit Visage gives haste, MR, and the best passive in the game for Volibear, heal and shield amp. If you don't need either of these items or you're super ahead, the oddball item I like to buy is Cosmic Drive. It enables you to shove waves super quickly and move around fights the way that Voli likes to. I know a lot of Voli players like Nashers over Cosmic, but I find that the move speed and the ability haste is more valuable than the extra damage that Nashers provides. Besides, if we're in a long fight, Voli's winning it anyways. In pretty much every game, we're going to have all of the aforementioned items in our inventory. Lucids, Iceborne, Frozen Heart, Spirit Visage, and Cosmic Drive. For last item picks, it's totally situational. Sometimes I'll grab a Turbo Chem Tank for heavier AP comps, a Deadman's for heavy AD, or if I need to transition more to a tank role, I'll grab a Gargoyle. Hullbreaker is also a great option for games if you're losing heavily and you need to become an X Factor. Now that we know how to build, it's time to get into how to play the lane. In general, we're looking to shove the first wave to secure level 2 priority on the enemy. What's worked well for me is hitting the minions a few times to start stack amp your passive, and then dipping into the trees to get a sneaky E off when the enemy goes for a CS. Try to do this as often as possible to whittle the enemy down a bit. While you're doing this, think about what the enemy has built. If they have a Doran Shield and second wind, consider stacking your passive a bit less in the early game, as if we hit them with our passive lightning, we're basically healing them. After getting level 2, combo your Q and E whenever the enemy walks up to take a trade. Auto first if you can, then prep an E and use your Q to stun them. Using Q gives a quick auto afterwards, so we can proc PTA before the lightning strikes. After your E goes off, get one more auto in to proc your shield bash, and then run away. This is a guaranteed winning trade against virtually any matchup if you can get it off, so look to zone the enemy off the wave, or punish them accordingly. We want to Pavlov our lane opponent into not contesting CS anymore, so that we can develop a lead. If all has gone well, your opponent should be around half HP and nearly pushed under their tower when we hit level 3. Having Maul up allows us to instantly proc PTA and completely zone the enemy off CS, and it also unlocks what I like to call the bread and butter, the kill combo that we're going to look for every game. The strategy is simple. Bait the enemy to walk up a tad by stepping in the trees or letting your cannon minion get to low HP. After that, prepare an E where they're going to be. Typically, this will be at the center of where they will stand to last hit a minion. After that, flash Q, auto, and W the enemy. Your lightning will typically strike before PTA is procced, but it also enables you to get a shield bash in before the enemy has time to flash away. At level 3, with a Doran's Ring and the right runes, this combo will easily deal over 350 damage and catch your enemy way off guard. Our entire early laning phase revolves around setting up this quick first blood combo, so make sure to whittle them down, knock off their bone plating with your passive, and strike for the kill on your cannon or after a faked back. As we start to get more items and levels, our W is going to start to be our main trading tool. Volibear is excellent at weaving under tower to get quick PTA procs with E, and then retreating with the shield, and by doing this, we can keep our lane opponent low. Our ideal scenario is after a first blood or the enemy backing after a bread and butter, we can have the enemy low again once we hit our level 6. We can frequently get a flash, if not a kill in the early game, and this enables us to get a second kill with our ult about as soon as we get it. Play the wave, shove it, and then prep a bite on the enemy. Then hit the gas and become the storm. We will have 3 seconds to kill our enemy before the tower starts shooting us, so use this time wisely. Weave autos between your spells, get a shield bash proc, and punish the enemy by making them miss a wave or 2. By setting up earlier with the bread and butter, and then pushing our lead, we quickly generate an XP lead and instill into the enemy's head that nowhere is safe. After taking the first tower and transitioning into the mid game, our game plan gets more open-ended. Our build is built for fighting and not only split pushing, so don't be afraid to secure objectives. Help with the second Rift Herald, drop in for a dragon fight, use your ult to take towers around the map. In typical even games, I use the strengths of my kit to run into bot lane and try to dive the ADC, and then set up shop in the bottom lane for a while I finish my next item. Rotating mid through the enemy jungle is also a great option if the enemy has a mid laner with minimal defensive tools. Voli is also great at stealing enemy buffs, and a blue buff feels great on Volibear after playing the map for a couple minutes and being low on mana. If you've been able to integrate the bread and butter and dive combos to win your lane, you should be taking 4v5 fights around the map while the enemy top laner scrambles to catch up. This is where you give the game to your win condition, who's normally your ADC. But, while I can tell you how to win the lane, I can't tell you how to win the game. You have 4 other teammates, some of whom are much greater win conditions than you are. Although you won't win every game, I've devised a couple of rules of thumb to getting ahead with Volibear and getting that coveted 60% win rate. First rule, play the map. Always shove waves you come across. You're really quick at it. Staying in the top lane after taking the first tower isn't always a bad call, especially on Volibear, where you can continue the pressure. Where to plant yourself on the map becomes a read on the game. If your bot lane is winning and wants mid, go bot, play defense. If you're super ahead and playing for tempo, get around and use your ult off cooldown to secure turrets and objectives. If you're behind, play more to split and become the front line your team needs. As the top laner, your job is to fill the team's gap. Since Volibear is so versatile, you can do pretty much anything. Just do the thing that your team needs but isn't doing. Second rule, be the problem. Since Volibear lanes so well, you can frequently be the most ahead champion on your team. Make the team come to you if possible. Stay in your lane if it gives carries the space they need. If the enemy isn't respecting you, punish them on the map, or just by killing them with a calculated dive. Build items to be the problem. A little bit of AP goes a long way on Volibear, so grab a Fiendish Codex and slap a tower if the split push game plan is working. Grab a Frozen Heart and kick the ADC out of their lane if they're becoming a problem. Farm that the enemy doesn't get is farm your team is effectively getting, so try to be a nuisance and pull people onto you instead of onto resources. Third rule, stay in fights as long as possible. Volibear has a surprising amount of sustain, especially with the Spirit Visage. Don't be afraid to die to win a fight for your team. Sometimes all you need to do is soak as much damage as possible on the front line for your team to win a fight. It's okay to die, just make sure your team is in a position to get a lead after the fact. Fourth rule, know your power spike. After getting out of the lane with your core items, you are the strongest champion on the map. It's pretty routine to 1v2 bot lanes on the champion. Just play enough games so that you know your limits, and then abuse your timings to secure objectives on the map. Alright, let's talk about when to pick Voli. The bear is super blind pickable in my opinion because he's so versatile, and for that reason when I get on a climbing spree, I tend to first pick him. That being said, he's not the best at everything. He does excel at playing against melee bruisers and tanks who need to get up in your face to win lane. Think about champions like Tryndamere, Cassante, Set, Garen, Darius, Sion, Nasus, and others like that. One special exception to that rule is Jax. Jax's Counter-Strike renders both your Q and W virtually useless, and he makes it nearly impossible to proc PTA. If I blind pick Voli into Jax, I take my grass page and I try to outshove him early and don't use my Q and W until his Counter-Strike is down. After Iceborne, the matchup gets a lot easier, being said. The sorts of champions that counter Voli are two types. Ranged lane bullies, think about champs like Vayne, Quinn, and Gnar. They should theoretically beat Volibear every time. I've beaten Vaynes and Gnars, but I tend to dodge against Quinn. Voli also struggles against tanks like Mundo, Singed, and Ornn that can keep you off of them and stay healthy enough to not get comboed. Against these sorts of matchups, I try to get a little more early AP and look to punish them early when they're weaker. Worst case, you get into a top lane shoving match, which you win regardless, but you won't get plates or get super ahead. Despite these counters, Voli can win virtually any matchup. In my games, I'm pretty much the only person who picks him, and for that reason not a lot of people know what to do against him. Abuse your early power spike and farm a gauntlet, and then stick on these tanks with your W. Later on, many of these tanks can't do enough damage to pierce your W healing and E shielding anyways. Alright, I'll just summarize everything we went over in the video before you go, and display a build so you can check it out when you're in game. For our skill build, we're going to take E level 1, Q level 2, before generally maxing W. Taking extra points in Q is alright if you're a kill threat on your opponent, or if you're playing against something that you can't really rebite often. For sums, we're going to take Flash and TP pretty much every game. We'll start by building a Doran's Ring, then building Lucidity Boots, and then we're going to pivot to an Iceborne. After that, we're generally going to buy a Frozen Heart or a Spirit Visage, but Cosmic Drive is good in winning games. We'll build all of these items before going for a situational last item, which frequently is a tank move speed item like Deadman's or Turbo Chem Tank, but Gargoyle, Hullbreaker, or Hourglass can be good too. And on that note, thanks for watching everyone. I know it's a little bit sloppy, it's my first time making a video, but if you have any questions, drop a comment, I'll try to respond. And then, yeah, good luck on the Rift, become the Storm, have a ball with the bear. See ya.